Morning all, Andy here, helping you build a career you love. Great to have you. Live office hours Thursday, or maybe you're watching this on a Tuesday or one of the other 5 days of the week. We're going to be talking job titles today. And I know it's a little confusing. Job titles, do they mean anything? Can I apply for a title higher than the one I have? All kinds of questions related to these. And the reason we're talking about this particular subject today is a couple of months ago during one of the Thursday live office hours shows, during the Q&A period, somebody had asked me about her evolution and if it looked bad or if it was a bad career move if she changed jobs and took a lower title. And I gave her a, 3 or 4 minute response. And then a couple of weeks ago, because I have this never-ending quest to be in front of you on every platform, like 24 hours a day, all year long, every day, all year long, we had a short on YouTube that we put out 5 days a week. If you are not subscribed, maybe you're missing those, where there was a clip from that where I was talking about job titles, and somebody commented on the short and said, Andy, I would love to hear more about this topic. This sounds like it could be a whole show. So for the two of them and you all, we're making this a whole show where I'm going to cover a number of topics related to titles, help you understand what they are, when they mean something, when they don't, how to make adjustments so that from a marketing perspective, you are doing an effective job of making sure somebody understands who you are, your level of seniority, the impact and you can have, and what to do when you have kind of clumsy titles that nobody really understands. I'm going to break it all down for you today. Before I dive in, I want to say hey to everybody. Varun, great to see you. Alec, thanks for showing up. T.A. Bragg, Peter, Donna, Nando, Mads, Keith, Jason, Chaley, I think it is. Is that right, Chaley? So great to see you too. And everybody else, make sure if you have any questions for me, you put some question marks in front of your questions. Let me know where you're watching this from. I always like to know that. And if you're in any of my programs, use a hashtag so I can identify you, give you a shout out, and I understand what assets you have at your disposal if I need to help you with that. All right, so let's get into this, and let's just make sure that we understand how titles are used. And I don't think what I'm about to say here in the next couple of minutes is going to be earth-shattering to anybody, but let's just think about titles for a second. What different kinds are there? So when I think about titles, I think about them kind of in 3 buckets. Now, there's nothing scientific about this. I just want to benchmark all of us so that we understand kind of what's out there and how they're used. There are what I call level titles, so kind of group number 1. Those are things like manager, director, vice president, and so on, kind of like your level on the corporate ladder. Sometimes they're used internally only, sometimes they're used externally as you're meeting with customers, clients, or people from the outside. But there's level titles. Those are generally common corporate style titles. Each company has its own stuff. I'm speaking in generalities. All right. Second thing is a functional title, which is what I prefer because it lets people know what it is that you do. So it's things like business analyst, project manager, engineer, database administrator, something like that, accountant, right? It gives me an indication, even if I don't know your organization, but basically, what is it? What's your forte? What do you understand from a solution perspective or a process perspective? Those are preferred because they give me a sense of what you do, and it's a little bit. These are a little bit more universal across organizations, where level titles are not universal at all. One person's vice president can be another. Or one company's vice president can be another organization's manager. It really makes no difference. And then there are kind of titles that I think are a little more wholly internal. These tend to be titles that are used in firms, law firms, consulting firms, those kind of organizations where they have staff members or analysts, or they have senior analysts or senior staff. Maybe they have managers. Maybe they have junior partners or associate partners or partners. That means nothing to anybody on the outside. It's a way of laddering people internally. Externally, it doesn't mean squat, but basically basically there are firms that use those kind of titles. So nothing too earth-shattering about this. But one of the things that I think is important about titles is that keep these things in mind when you think about your title and how it might impact your communication of it with the outside world, or whether you're considering applying for a job with a similar title or something like that. There's the relevance. How relevant is that title? Do I actually understand it? What is it? Is it relevant to me as somebody who might be hiring you? Do I actually know what you do? Do I have an understanding? A lot of times I coach people and they think what's universal language is not universal language. And I show them how I could have different interpretations based on all the companies that I've recruited for and I've consulted to, and what different kind of titles that people in those organizations had and what it meant to those companies. So there's a lot more disparity than you would imagine. So understanding is key. And then level of seniority. I get that generally speaking, vice presidents generally, not always, are more senior than somebody who has a managerial title, at least within that organization. So these are the kind of things that I want you to think about when you consider your title. Now, the first question that a lot of people have is, how much does this really matter? I coach some people, they agonize over this stuff. They agonize over the titles. Their goal is to have a higher title, whether it's inside their organization or outside their organization. And while I'm never going to tell you what your goal should be, oftentimes you're focusing on something that is not within your control, often doesn't matter as much as you think it does. But I wrote this out because it made me feel better. I hope it registers with you, but no one cares. Literally, no one cares what your title is as much as you do. And it doesn't really matter as much as you think in terms of job progression, getting another job, or making an impact in your organization. It really doesn't. And while I wrote no one cares, let's just say 99% of people, because there's going to be individuals that are out there that do care, but most of them do not. Now, next thing I want to talk about is and this goes along with the woman who'd asked me this a few months back about, was it going to be detrimental to her career history if she took a title that was lower? In the same vein, I'd like to talk about, well, what about you applying for jobs? And by the way, I don't even want you to apply for jobs, but in the spirit of targeting an organization, targeting a person, targeting a position, or whatever it is, should you focus on titles that are similar? What happens if you try to reach a level up? Does it hurt you or does it increase your chances by shooting what you think is a level below? And to all of that, I would say, don't pay a whole lot of attention to the titles themselves. But what I want you to do is focus on what's in the job description as far as what they're asking for. If you're a manager and you have 10 years of experience, there will be vice presidents with 10 years of experience. What is the job that you're looking to apply for calling for? Is it 6 years of experience, 15 years of experience? I want you to have some kind of understanding of what the roles, responsibilities, and goals of the position are. That's going to supersede what you're called. And the other thing about this is there's a translation between what your company might call you, or what your functional title might be, or what the cheeky title is that they gave you might be, versus what some other organization is calling it. So I want to talk about a couple of real life examples here when we talk about targeting, just to get your mind right. First thing is, okay, and I always have to say this because it would not be responsible of me not to say this every single session that we're together. I don't ever want you applying for jobs, and I don't ever want you to care about titles, right? If you go to the Andy School of Job Searching, if I was job searching right now, I would not spend one singular minute searching the internet for job titles or job descriptions or open positions. I would spend literally 0 minutes. I'm not exaggerating for effect. I would spend 0 minutes because that's a fraction and a small fraction of what's publicized and publicly publicized and available in the world, which is a small fraction of what's actually available in the world. And I want to make happen what I want to make happen, which is particular companies that I would want to work for and capacities I would want to work for. I don't care what you call me. I would be targeting companies and bosses. So I wouldn't even care what their titles were or whether they called people in the business development department business development executives or account managers or key account managers. I don't really care about any of that stuff, right? I would go for the units in the organizations that I want to. So that's first and foremost. That makes everything else a moot point. But let's say it's not, because I know a lot of you are not going to go about your job search that way as much as I would love for you to. So when you look at targeting, so opportunities in the market, companies, maybe open positions they have, maybe they don't have an open position, but this is what the people on the team that I would join are called. I had this. This is super fresh. Last night, my last coaching session of the day. I don't know if he's here. Super guy, very sharp. And we spent probably the first 25% of his coaching session. I was trying to help him. He was looking for guidance on kind of distilling down who he was, how to articulate his bread and butter to the world, making sure that his resume was in order and reflected this, but also that the types of positions that he wanted to apply for, that he was shooting at the right targets and those kind of things. But we spent the first 25% of his hour or so first 15 minutes, trying to figure out and get on the same page with the language we were using to determine exactly what he did, and for me to understand truly what he was doing, not what it was called or the adjectives that were being used to describe what he did. And to be specific so you understand what I mean, this individual at the end of that 15 minutes or so, he was articulating to me about how he would do certain things that would help organizations improve their, in this case, customer experience through innovation. Now, the word innovation in and of itself, while you might use it, now when I think of innovation, if you're an innovation analyst or you're an innovation anything, or you're saying the word innovation to describe something to me, my mindset immediately goes to, well, it needs to be innovative, meaning it needs to be new. Not something that's commonplace, not something that 90% of the world is doing at this moment. But as it turns out, this individual was very sharp at understanding how to evaluate. So he had analytical skills as an analyst. He had analytical skills as from a data and analytics perspective. He had human-centered consulting. He would be able to understand process reengineering. He actually could translate that into technology improvements, especially as it related in some of these cases to applications, maybe mobile apps and things of that nature. And while some company might call that innovative, mobile apps have been around for a decade or more, right? And so that to me isn't very innovative, but it can make it confusing when you're trying to figure out, well, how do I explain what I do without somebody misunderstanding it? And how do I miss opportunities that actually are publicized in the world that I might be a fit for, but I'm not using the right language, and I don't want to use language that's going to make me sound like I'm a lower level than I am, or that it isn't as creative as innovation connotates and those kinds of things. So when we got down to a basic understanding, in any form, there was an array of things that this individual can do, and different ways that he could go about articulating who he was, his area of expertise, what business functions he understood, his level of proficiency in these, and then how do I target different positions. But as it turned out, to me, at the core, this was an individual who could design, architect the processes, implement technologies to help organizations advance their whatever it is programs so that they were faster, cheaper, more economical, could process more people faster at a better experience, and so on. It's just very consultative, which is what a lot of people do. So we looked at one of the job descriptions that he had, and it was for a municipality on the East Coast. And it was titled innovation and implementation analyst or something like this. But when we got into the weeds of the description, he was wholly qualified for this, although he might have had some work to do as far as mapping what he had done historically with with this particular job description, and he had all the requisite experience. But to me, the job titling itself was confusing and causing confusion. So I want you to keep in mind that work things from the bottom up. What's inside the job description should help you understand, are you qualified? I don't care what he called himself, because he was qualified for that particular job. And so then it becomes a matter of matching and mapping and basically spoon feeding whoever's going to receive your resume or whoever you're speaking to in the interview. And the other thing is, sometimes you got to go in the other direction where you're not spending so much time mapping what it is that you do. And I'll get into the tactics of how to do that. I had a situation with a client once in the Chicagoland area, manufacturing company, privately held. The chief financial officer of the organization and the vice president, I think she was a senior vice president of HR, were my contacts. That's who we were doing the search for. And they wanted to hire a vice president of information technology. They wanted their IT VP, who would have been the highest ranking IT person in their company, who would report to the CFO. So they wanted me to go out and get somebody who they deemed qualified, who could handle the things that they needed to. They had a rather small IT department, which was like 5 people, maybe one person that was managing the desktops, and one person that managed the network, and one person that liaised with the business units, and one person that managed the legacy ERP system. They had a very small team. They wanted to pay $180,000. And I'm looking at this search, and I'm thinking to myself, they don't need a VP of IT. They need some manager, some younger gun who wants to take a step up and have more of a leadership and influential position, build their executive interaction skills and presence and those kind of things. And any VP of IT that's currently a VP of IT isn't going to want this job, and that's okay. That's just not for them. It's probably for some manager or director that's either managing a small team or somebody who's stuck in a bureaucratic organization that isn't going to be able to climb higher because of the rigid structure or the bodies that are in front of him or her. So I present an individual who was wholly qualified, who'd managed a 30-person team, but he was looking for a change, and he wanted to get into a new organization. He wanted to kind of have a seat at the table, and he was a director where he was. I present this person to the HR woman and the CFO, and both of them said, well, geez, this person is only a director. It's like, yeah, this person manages a 30-person team, a budget that's 10 times what your budget is. Right. So from a qualifications standpoint, this person should have been their dream person, but they're old school thinkers. So I learned my lesson. So the next person I present, who wasn't even as qualified as this, was a great candidate as well. This person's title was a manager of IT. Before I presented him and the resume and the packet and my write-up and everything else that goes along with it, I said to him, listen, I need you to go into your resume, and I need you to wipe out your title. Just wipe it out. Don't even, you have no title. And all I want you to do is I want you to replace your title with the words Information Technology Group. That's it. Just write that right there. Just write that. So company name underneath it, right? Company description underneath it, your that, not even a title, just put that. And then underneath that, I want you to mention your activities, not your account, just your activities. Manage IT staff of 20 that covers applications, desktop management, infrastructure, networking, so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. Budgets of, and that, and just write that. And then let's clean up the bullets, and I'm going to submit it. He sends it back to me. I send it into him. This guy wasn't anywhere near as qualified as the first person I sent, and the HR person and the CFO said, now this is perfect. This guy's more like it. Right, because they didn't see a title that didn't skew the way they were thinking about an individual. They looked at his qualifications. It goes both ways. I want somebody to show me the actual law that says you have to put a title on your resume. Yeah, I recommend that you do. In my template, you do. But I don't care what I have to do to market myself into a job. I didn't care what I had to do to market my candidates into those jobs. I don't want you to care what you have to do in order to market yourself into a job. So I want you to be thinking about, is this going to help me, hurt me, or not? You don't have to have a title on your resume. You don't have to be called anything. Right. So, but you do need to describe what it is that you're doing. And so that was what was important. Now, I want to talk about how you might be able to do this should you get in a pickle like this. Because could your title either be confusing, meaning I don't know what engineer 3 means? Are you a network engineer? Are you a system engineer? Right? Are you actually an architect? Right? Kind of thing. And so what I like to do, and for those of you that haven't gone to the Andy School of Resume Writing, don't you worry, because Kara can drop in the chat the resume writing free template that I give you. But what you can do is you can put your title in underneath the company name. And what you do is you can either put the actual title or a functional title. So if you're vice president and I don't know what of, you could put vice president, comma, program management office or whatever, that's fine. Or you could put program manager, that's fine. It really makes no difference to me. But you want to make sure that you have a title that is what? Relevant and understood. And then what you can do is you put a description of the responsibilities underneath that. So what I had this individual do was I had him basically wipe his title off and just put a description of the responsibilities. And so once they saw what he was doing in the order of magnitude, then what they did was they mapped that to what they needed. And that's what helps you when you have a description of the activities, which gives the reviewer context of what it is that you do. So if you are not familiar with what I'm speaking about, I am not talking about putting bullets under your title. You will eventually do that. I'm talking about putting a description that gives somebody an explanation of the housekeeping and most boring aspects of what you do that serve no other purpose other than making sure that they know the broad strokes of what you're handling. Not what you've accomplished, but basically what you do. You managing people is not an accomplishment. You're just telling them I manage 10 people. I manage 20 people. I manage a budget of 32 million. I don't know if it started at 0 or if it started at 60 and now you're down to 38. You're just telling me to give me context. The bullets underneath the description for each title will address your accomplishments. But I'm just talking about titles today. And so I want you to make sure that you use a title that gives somebody an understanding of what it is that you do. And then a description of the responsibilities. And if you have a confusing title, the way to handle this is to put a functional title in the title spot. And then you have a description, and at the end of the description, or in the middle or at the beginning, I don't really care where you put it, you can put a clause that says, known internally as, titled internally as. So if you have a silly title like happiness expert that nobody understands what that is, but you insist on having it on your resume because you're super worried that if somebody does a background check, they need to see what the title is that you hold, then just put it in the description, but bury it. We don't want that to be what people see. I don't understand what happiness expert means. Oh, you mean you set up all the processes that are aimed at managing employees to ensure that they live a peaceful existence inside your organization. Right, so what you want to do is you can either put happiness expert as the title and then describe it and be crystal clear on what that means, or you can put whatever the functional title is and then describe what your responsibilities are, and then cover yourself with known internally as, titled internally as, and then put your title there. And if anybody asks you about that, just say, I did that because I wanted to make sure you understood what I do. There's not a person on the planet that wouldn't appreciate that. And there's nothing wrong with what I just said. Okay? So if you have a confusing title. Now, somebody had asked before, right? The woman who originally kind of kicked off the impetus for this session today she said, well, is it going to hurt my career history if I apply for and accept a lower level position? In those cases, I want you to follow the same instruction I just gave you on the confusing title situation. On your resume, have your title, then a description. You should always have this. It doesn't matter if your title is crystal clear. The description is a great chance for you to stuff the housekeeping items of what you do, the boring activity-based stuff, into a 2 to 3 line paragraph that basically educates the reviewer of what responsibilities you're handling. So you can do that this way. Now, you might explain it in the interview, and that's fine too. But if I look at a situation where I see somebody was a director, and then they are more recently a manager, that description under both of those titles might very clearly answer or clarify for me why you had a director title at one company and why you hold a managerial title at another company. I've recruited people who've had director then manager titles, and they've made twice as much money as managers. There isn't always an equal transfer of or translation of titles from one company to another. There's a whole host of factors that go into this, and size of the company could matter, level of experience that they're looking for, some companies are very egalitarian. They don't like a lot of layers or titles, right? If you're in a bank, you're a vice president, basically when you walk out of college, because everybody in a bank's a vice president of something, or an assistant vice president of something, kind of thing. So just you're able to do this. I would not worry as long as you can explain. Now, some of you might say, well, Andy, no, I actually took a lower level. I was managing a staff of 500. I was out of work for 6 months, and then I took a managerial title, and I had no direct reports, and it technically was a step down, even in my mind, and so on. Then you got a different rationale that you're using. But I wouldn't worry too much about this. From a targeting perspective and applying, and when I say applying, I'm talking about targeting companies, targeting bosses. But if you want to apply through the applicant trashing system, be my guest. Just base it on the responsibilities. This goes back to my point about focusing inside the job description and making sure that you understand what it is that they're asking for. And some people say, well, Andy, should I, they're asking, it's a vice president level position. I'm only a director. They're asking for 10 years of experience. I only have 8. Should I apply? To which I would say, nothing is ever cut and dry like that. First thing you need to know about what's inside of the responsibilities is the company's dream person and the exact profile that they are hoping for. It doesn't mean that they will not entertain others who don't meet all their different requirements, even if they say required. I hate doing this air quote thing, but you know what I mean. So what I want you to do is I want you to look at what it is that you do. I want you to look at is what it is they're asking for. Do you really need, if I got 6 or 7 years and they're asking for 10, I'm going. If they say, we want you to know this, this, and this, if you know 2 of the 3, I'm going. If you're a project manager and they say, we're looking for a project manager who understands IT projects and the software development lifecycle, who has agile and waterfall methodologies, who understands how to implement CRM systems in the healthcare space. I don't know how many that is, but now I'm looking at all of these things that they're asking for, and I'm saying, what are the only things that matter? The only things that matter is if I'm an IT project manager, I'm applying. All that other stuff is easy to learn. If I'm an IT project manager who knows how to implement CRM systems, but I've only done it for manufacturing companies and financial services companies, I'm applying. Because the keys to hire are probably running projects, running IT projects, and then it might become a matter of size, meaning how big of the projects are you running and something like that. More so than layer after layer of specifics related to industry expertise, domain expertise, maybe even solution expertise. Maybe you don't even know CRM. I'd still go, kind of thing. So now, without going through every one of you and every example and all the combinations of what companies could be asking for and what they desperately need, I ask you in these situations, use your head. You know as a whatever, insert whatever you are here, what's really, really important. And when you look at the responsibilities, I would not be applying online. I would try and be target bosses or networking my way in. But when you get in there, I would ask them immediately, of all these 7 things that you're looking for, what are the most important skill sets? And then I would be focusing on those. But for the most part, you're going to know this. You will know. And yes, you will encounter some organizations who say, no, I absolutely need a seller in consumer product goods who sold this kind of clothing in women's this or that or whatever, right? And yes, there are going to be some of that, to which I'm going to say, don't worry about it. Right? Focus on your reach outs, your networking, your boss targets, and all that other good stuff. So when it comes to applying, make sure you're looking inside the JD. Now, next thing I want to hit you with, I would try to avoid, whether on your resume or in LinkedIn, I would avoid cheeky titles, okay? If you're me, or like me, where you don't care if any recruiter ever looks at your profile, I don't care if anybody calls me ever for a job, I could put anything I want. I could put career happiness expert. I could put anything I want. But for you, if you're looking for a job, stick to the basics. Don't put chief cook and bottle washer, okay? Yeah, you might be, but don't do that. Be findable, and you're findable by function, not level title. You're findable by business analyst, not vice president. No one goes in there and looks for vice president. They look for function. Okay, so try to avoid that on your resume. And on your resume, I've showed you how to neutralize that. If you're not sure, grab the free resume template and try to stay away from this. Now, there's one other thing I thought that I do want to add to this talk, is because I see this a lot, and I always kind of chuckle. I don't know why organizations would ever do this, but they do this. I'm a junior sales rep. I'm a key account manager, right? I'm a national sales rep. I'm a regional sales rep. I'm a global sales rep. Now, I understand why those occur, but the word junior should not be found anywhere on a resume, ever. I don't even care if you're called a junior analyst. Don't put junior analyst, just put analyst, right? It's a junior partner, junior whatever it is, because it's about how much experience you have. I don't care that they call you a junior analyst or a junior partner. You're a partner, right? Kind of thing. And so to the outside world, those kind of things are going to make you look diminutive. Don't do that. I wouldn't even put that on my resume. I don't care if that's what you are officially called, because it doesn't do anything from a marketing standpoint. And I threw this up to remind myself, but I've seen situations like HR manager and HR analyst. I know HR analysts or HR people who are far more senior than HR managers, but that this company over here had 7 HR managers because they had an HR manager for benefits and vendors and payroll and whatever. And then this company over here that had 500 people and only had 2 HR people, the VP of HR and then the other person who actually did everything, right? Who happened to be called an HR analyst. If you find yourself in these situations where you're like, I'm at a detriment because of what my company calls me, lift it. Just put human resources or something like that. Responsible for all HR functions, including, boom, 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 list them all out, right? To give what? Context of the housekeeping stuff. So, and then like things like support analyst, what do you support? There's no connection or you haven't made it relevant, and I don't understand what you do. Do you support all IT related whatevers? Are you an internal support analyst where you support the desktops of the people in your in laptops of the people in your company? Are you in a call support center where somebody emails you from the outside and you're right, you're a support engineer analyst? So you want to be careful, and you're probably wondering, well, why am I saying all this? Because I want you just to look at your resume to see, do you have things on there that, number one, people aren't going to understand, number two, might hurt you, where you're being penalized unfairly to the immediate reaction, rather than that's not actually what I do. Just because I'm an HR analyst, I know everything. I'm SHRM certified. I mean, I'm SHRM certified, and I'm all this other stuff, and I know every function and everything there is to know about HR. It's just that my company, I'm the only person, and we're a 500-person company, and I'm the one who does everything. I'm the worker bee, right? So you don't want to penalize yourself. All right, so when you think about titles, there's a lot going on here. There's no perfect answer. It doesn't matter as much as you think, but just keep in mind the levels, the functions, whether stuff is internal. And the only other thing I want to say to recap this is always be thinking, is it relevant? Will people understand me? And do they have an idea of my level of seniority? Going back to my HR analyst example, right? That HR analyst could be really, really savvy, really, really smart, and really, really experienced, and she's called an analyst, when the guy over there is called an HR manager who doesn't have near the experience she does. So you just want to make sure that you're doing what you need to in order to accommodate. All right, so if you enjoyed that, make sure to click the like button. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Share this. People need help. People need help. Thank those 2 people, whoever they are. Maybe you can find them on my YouTube channel that served as the impetus for for this video. If you're watching this on the recording, I'll see you next week. If you're here with me live, we're going to the chat.